What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We're back with the Woke Podcast. Oh god, I think I was supposed to change the name, but I couldn't think of anything. But this is episode number 12, and boy, the a lot has been going on in America where I uh, live. I was trying to think of a better word, but habitate. Habit is it? What was it? Yeah, that's not bad. But basically, as pretty much everyone knows, Roe v. Wade was repealed in the Supreme Court, and this is obviously a very big deal. And now, if you're a foreigner or if you're a dumbass, you don't know what Roe v. Wade is. So basically, I believe in the 1970s, a woman named Roe um, was trying to get an abortion, and I believe she was in Texas. I can't remember, maybe California. Anyways, I'm so smart people. I apologize. But anyways, she wanted abortion, and the states would not let her, and she took them to court. And Wade, who was like I think an attorney or something like that, some sort of politician, who was arguing, and then she argued that the Constitution uh, guarantees people their privacy. So therefore, which which was essentially like her body, right? Which she has privacy to, sort of like if she can do whatever with her land or something like that, or like her house or car, something like that, right? She has the right to privacy, therefore, she has the freedom to, have an abortion under the constitutional 14th Amendment, I believe, right? Right. But, and after a lot of, you know, civil rights work and, protests, and a lot of women and men, going out there in support of Roe, and lots of I don't know if you say campaign, but more of just like expressing uh, protest kind of has a negative connotation to it, so that's why I'm not saying protest, but essentially the word gets out and they gain support, and it's passed that yes, in fact, uh, women has the constitutional right to an abortion the privacy under privacy, right? But the problem with that, so on a federal level or a national level, abortions are illegal in America. Now the problem with this is state level. Certain states basically would not pass this law because they deemed it unconstitutional, or that they had a different law that would inhibit uh, abortions. Now, but the thing was, after this case, Roe v. Wade, abortion was essentially legal nationwide in America, and that was okay. Obviously, there was different, places like Alabama, etc., um, where you couldn't have an abortion still, right? But we were making progress. Now, what happened under the I forget who's the lady judge. What's her name? She passed away. Female judge. So like I was saying, the situation is that this female judge. I still can't remember her name. I'm sorry. I'll find it. Fucking, I was gonna say LGB Lyndon B. Johnson. It's definitely not her. Judge. What the hell is her name? Anyway, she passed away, and Trump appointed a more conservative. Oh, it's Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She passed away, so now they're trying to figure out. Trump put in a more conservative judge. Now, with whether this is the direct reason Roe v. Wade was, repealed, or if there's other factors, I'm not sure. More left-wing people argue that it was because, obviously they want to attack the conservatives and also Trump. Now, I don't know much about it to speak on that, but here's what an argument for, against, or question from Democrats or left-wing people. You'd ask is that it's been like 30-40 years. Why haven't you made that into a full-fledged law so it just can't be repealed by a judge? Now, that's a good point. Now, obviously the legal process is very difficult. So I understand that it might have been difficult to get it into a law, but I suppose the main problem is the question of abortion, right? It's a very heated topic. Now, the question is that, you have such polar opposites arguing, one side saying you are limiting a woman's rights and, upholding a sexist dogma of the past in the 21st century, I mean, and that's terrible. We shouldn't be doing that. Now, the other side goes to the super extreme, saying, like, you're killing a baby. Obviously, that's an awful thing. Now, I want to talk about the people who are very vehemently coming out and talking about women's rights and things. Okay, that's understandable. Obviously, I understand that, but I also want to point out, like, no one seems to care about, women in most of the planet, honestly, who don't have access to, sanitary products, things like tampons and pads and things like that are, literally save, I don't even know the numbers, millions of young women in women's lives who are, don't have those products or can't afford it, or, are not provided those products, and, all kinds of infections, pains, and that comes with not having those things available to them. No one seems to care about that, Also, a lot of women, experience terrible sexism, whether that be domestic abuse. Now, I'm not saying that's sexism. It's obviously, it's more of a cultural issue that we're trying to figure out, but no one seems to care about that or trying to help them. And I understand that that's a tough thing to combat, but I just want to kind of point out the hypocrisy or I suppose, downfalls of that. Maybe spread a bit of awareness for that, since we are on the topic of helping women, or fighting for women's rights. How about those people who are literally, whether that be for religious or cultural reasons, inhibited from careers, certain human freedoms, like being able to wear certain things, or being able to go out and most people know what I'm talking about. But the thing is, I also want to say that a lot of these women in these cultures, right, whether that be the Middle East, Africa, South America, whatever. Now the thing about it is that most of them will not say that they're in a bad situation, right? Now I know this could be Western perspective outreaching, but I am, if you don't know, I am an immigrant from Bangladesh to America, so I have a little bit more, what do you say, knowledge, or I've seen those women, I've seen those people, so I want to talk about that if you are told a certain, terrible truth, we'll say, now for your whole life, you'll defend it because that's all because you don't think about it. For example, now this is a very extreme example, and there's definitely certain ways that women do experience terrible things, but this is a very extreme example, I know. But I will say, like, for example, America, a lot of black people who were slaves at the time supported, not just, I don't know about supported, but more like was okay with slavery because, that everybody around them, maybe if you're in the South or something, or in a big plantation, um, was a slave, right? So a lot of these slaves were okay with slavery because that's the only thing they knew. Obviously, they weren't celebrating it, but it's sort of like that's just how life is. Like, what else are you gonna do? Or more just like, you don't know that you're a human being just like a white person, or whatever the case, or a male or a female, and you should have equal rights and opportunity, right? But since they never known that, or seen like everybody around them of their color and creed, I suppose, being enslaved, they were sort of okay with it. You know what I mean? So it doesn't matter if certain people agree or like doesn't have a problem with certain sexisms, but I think it still should be talked about or helped. For example, I know this is kind of hard. This is very vague, but I'll give you an example. Like a lot of, we'll say, South Asian, African, those areas, women, married women, an extremely high amount. I mean, like above like 60% experience some sort of domestic abuse throughout their, marital life. And this is very, very common, and most people know it, and they, obviously the verbal abuse, that's kind of a given, but also physical abuse. They experience it, and a lot of people kind of know about this, right? But they just accept it as sort of a fact of life, so you don't think too much about it. which may seem crazy to a lot of people, but this is true. And if you sort of talk to someone who's got out of that and moved somewhere else or something like that, they can explain it to you how that is. It's sort of like if you see it everywhere, you're not going to think too much of it. That's just how life goes. And I'm not saying it's okay. So that's what I'm trying to point out, that, no one seems to. And I think the reason for that, a lot of Americans just don't know that. And also, I suppose I'll get into more ranty territory. And so, I believe Dostoevsky talked about Americans was that they're incredibly successful people and optimistic and, hardworking people, but they have no soul. And that's pretty good, because damn, he got us there. But at the same time, Dostoevsky, Lenin took over, and 100 years of atheism really didn't help Russia, did it, pussy? Dostoevsky is a genius. But so that was sort of a mini rant. I just want to talk about, trying to help those people. But obviously, I don't know how. How do you do that? It just, you kind of have those people, people who live there, kind of have to figure it out themselves. But it still, concerns me. But anyways, so I like to say, like, these people who are sort of coming out and trying in support of women's rights and things, they don't seem to care about any of that. They don't seem to care about, it's sort of like it's okay, so it's very easy to go on social media and like post a picture or a certain, to spread awareness. And I'm not shitting on that. It's good, but like I'm just saying, versus like, say someone like who puts like some message about not, being against racism or whatever. But it's also like, would you have been marching, for example, from the march to Selma when, police officers and were hosing people down, attacking them with dogs, with bats and things? Would you have done that? Probably not. Not most people. And my point is that a lot of people don't have souls. And I'm not saying I am necessarily different from people. A self-aware sheep and a unaware sheep are both sheep. Doesn't matter if one is conscious of its surroundings versus the other being sort of dull. So I'm not trying to attack or trying to put myself in a, higher position. I know about these things and like to talk about it, I guess, or because most people are just kind of airheads, and I don't want to attack them. I don't blame them if you don't. It's sort of like, it's a lot of headache. I used to, when I was younger, think about these kinds of things a lot more, and it's a terrible thing because like you're kind of hopeless because you don't know what to do, so you're just kind of stuck knowing this terrible reality. So it was a bit rough on me. So I don't blame people, but it's like people want to fight now or whatever. It's like you don't want to fight during the Vietnam War where they were massacring innocent people and going into war for their own benefit, the military industrial complex. You didn't care about then, or some people did, and then you move on, right? 9/11, same thing. Your freedom's being taken away at certain check-ins, and they're invading your privacy. But hey, who cares? what do you say? And go on. For example, the George Floyd situation, a terrible tragedy, and happens all the time. But those the organization and the lady at the head of the organization who basically BLM, for example, raised like I believe $1.4 billion, and that didn't help a kid in Detroit. That didn't help a single mother, you know, buy a present for her kid. That didn't help a black man who's trying to make ends meet for his family. That didn't help a African American veteran who is so distraught and broken by war and hardships of life that he is physically unable to support himself and has gone down a path of addiction or drugs. That didn't help kids in Detroit get a good education instead of having to fight for their lives and being surrounded by gang violence and seeing their friends being murdered and robbing people and things like that, and understanding that this sort of behavior should not be glorified, and there's other options and there's other things to life, there's other pursuits they can pursue and be successful at, and a lot of black on black crime, for example, those areas like Detroit, Cleveland, Atlanta, helping those people get jobs and trying to support how do we stop all these deaths. Obviously the media sort of fetishizes the white America killing black people, and that gets a lot of clicks and views, so obviously they would do that, but it's a bit depressing to me, because it's you tell people about how 14-year-old kids who are dying because of gang violence or going into prison because they're in this awful environment, and they basically grown up thinking that this is the only way of life as to get into that. And if everybody is, or not everybody, if most people are doing these things, I'm not saying it's impossible to become a doctor or a lawyer or whatever you want to say in this environment, but if most people around you are doing certain things and surrounded by certain influences, you're likely going to go on to that path, and no one seems to care about that. And I'm not sure, because it's a culture issue, you want to stop, a lot of people argue it's like, oh, you need to stop glorifying violence and things like this, and like sort of hip hop or the culture. But it's like, first of all, we need to, you gotta have a starting point. That's that's true, but like, how do you get to that point? Whether that be, it started off, I mean, who knows what, but the Black Panthers, and it's progressing on, and now we're in this place where it's a very bizarre thing, because you have a lot of respected like rappers and things who are quote unquote gangsters, or it's very alluring, the culture of it. So we're trying to it's hard to figure out how do you stop, and there's definitely activists, a lot of people who've a lot of sort of ex, not I don't know about ex, but just people from those areas who actually been to prison or served a certain amount of time who are speaking out for the younger generation, talking about, hey, this is an awful thing. I had to sacrifice 10, 15 years of my life because when I was 16 or something, I had gotten involved in a gang, and I did a robbery or whatever, or murder charge or assisted in it, and you need to stop participating in these things, etc. Polo G said it, I think, the best when he said, there are no heroes, so we looked up to the villains. I know that's a bit cheesy, but it's true. It's if everybody around you is like that, you're gonna gravitate towards that. So I'm not sure how do you solve that, but I think a lot of people should talk about it. But the problem with that is it gets very kind of racially confusing, because there's a lot of racists sort of will use it to attack black people or something like that. So it's tough to figure out where is a good medium, or it's definitely getting better, but America seems to be like a lot of these white liberals want to be like black people are victims and everything, and like we need to help them and blah blah blah. And it's like, don't you see how kind of demeaning that is? It's like you have to help them and you got to speak out for them, and it's like when people say, like, say if you're like Chinese or something, and you say, and someone is usually like, I'm not trying to attack white people, it's tough, what it doesn't matter, right? Like a Chinese person, and somebody asks them, oh, and they tell them, yeah, I'm Chinese, and they're like, oh, I love Chinese food. It's like, what is it? You know what I mean? It's like, I know they're trying to be nice, but it's also like, what is that supposed to mean? It's like, it's all right, man, that's cool, I do too, or something. It's like, it just seems a bit odd, but this I guess we'll go back to Roe v. Wade, right? So this is sort of the, I think, two questions I have and a lot of people have. It's like, for example, conception, and so here's the problem. When is a baby or a fetus considered a human being? This is the problem, right? Now, I'm not talking about like sexual assault, incest, when a woman is physically incapable of, or like has a high chance of dying if they have the baby, things like that, like complications and health risks. I think those should always be permitted or whatever. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the idea of abortion, right? Because that is the, one side will say it's a clump of cells versus another side saying it's a baby. For example, like if it's like 6 months in, it's like, well, that's a bit rough. You know what I'm saying? That is a very rough, because those clump of cells has a head. That clump of cells has a beating heart and eyeballs, So it's very tough. The thing is, I just want to say, like, when is it considered human, right? Is it 3 months? Is it 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, 9 months, 8 months? When is it considered a human, right? And that's because we don't know, right? sort of pro-life, pro-choice people will say, like, 6 months or something like that is okay or so whatever. But it's like, my question is, who are you to decide that? Now, on the other side, who say, you know, this is when a baby is always a baby or whatever. We can get an extreme example. It's like a baby contraceptive should be banned or something, some stupid like that. But this is a genuine question. It's like, who are you to decide when it is a baby and when it's not? That's a very tough thing to answer, because I don't know. And I'm sort of against abortion. I am. Because, but I don't make a headache of it, because there's a lot of things that I'm against. For example, slave labor. I have an iPhone, Now, slave labor is a very strong word, but more like very poor working conditions and sweatshops, essentially. But I have a lot of clothes, which I know is from those shops, because I know those people. So it's tough trying to figure out. So that's really the question, right? It's like, how do you decide that, and who are you to decide that? Do we? How can we ever know? And the answer is that we don't. You can't answer that question. Maybe in a scientific sense, whatever, you can attempt to, but philosophically and morally, ethically, you generally can't. So I think people should talk about that, but at the same time, understand the limitations of that. That so yeah, so it's a tough thing to try to sort out, but I don't know what they're gonna do. I just hope that victims of sexual assault, all these people can find some sort of haven. But I don't know how that's gonna happen. I don't, protests and all these things, they usually don't work. And it's a sad reality, but it really doesn't. But I just want to say, hopefully everybody can prosper. I don't really have much else to say, but because I have some other things, but it's very off topic, and I don't know if I should change the topic to something like that, because it seems a bit, I don't know, out of left field. But it's just, I hope everybody, we can move past this somehow, but I don't know how we would necessarily do that. But hey, that's it's a reality we're living in, and a lot of people tend to, especially me, I'm a terrible pessimist, but so it's very easy to get down on all the tragedies that plague the planet. But also, this is the best time in all of human history. We're all we've all, doing better and heading on those better directions. Although obviously we'll never sort of be satisfied, because perfection doesn't exist, and it's a good thing that it doesn't, but we just need to keep on keeping on, I guess, and we'll get there eventually, and it'll be, hopefully it's just sooner the better. But I guess the best thing, I always try to repeat this. Just try to be the best version of yourself. These very basic things, be kind to your neighbors, which doesn't literally mean just be kind to your neighbors, just, the people you interact with, your close personal family and friends, because it tends to, a lot of times I feel like, including myself, tend to put a lot on the people you're close to because you trust them and you can sort of. But also, it's very important to show them care and don't put all your shit on them all the time. Obviously, you should talk to them about your, hardships and stuff, but don't, don't abuse their love for you, and just because you can sort of, they'll still care about you because, they're very close to you. So be careful about that, and I don't know. Just keep on trying to live on, I guess. Should become a motivational speaker. That would be horrible. I'd be like that. Well, it would be like the opposite of a motivation. I'd just make people depressed. I'd be a psychologist. Alright, guys, I'm rambling. Thank you so much, and we'll see how it goes, I guess. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.